The Victorian station breathes in silence and exudes a peculiar smell. A mingling of coal smoke, damp wool, leather luggage, and freshly printed newspapers stacked near the ticket booth. Each scent belongs to the century that believed in progress. Somewhere, a porter wheels a cart with polished brass handles. His boots tap against the tiles, and a faint echo follows him down the long corridor. At the far end, the steam engine waits, its black iron frame glistening under the lamps like the shell of some sleeping creature, its breath rising in pale plumes that dissolve into the rafters. In the waiting room, a few travelers doze upright in their seats. A young woman in a bonnet leans against her carpetbag, while an older gentleman peers at his pocket watch every few minutes as though time itself might run away without him. The benches are heavy oak, carved and darkened by the touch of countless hands over the years. The newspaper vendor yawns, adjusts his vest, and unfolds the morning edition. The headlines speak of progress. A new railway line opening to the north, a faster engine tested in Derby, an accident avoided somewhere near Bristol. The age of iron has no patience for silence. Yet, in this moment before the whistle, the quiet is thick, and even the pigeons under the roof seem unwilling to stir. Good evening, traveler. If you're here tonight, perhaps you're ready to be immersed, gently, peacefully, into a world of smoke and steel, where the first trains stitched the Victorian landscape with their iron threads. Before we begin, take a moment to settle in. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you'll have your ticket in hand next time. And if you'd like, leave a comment below. Tell us where you're listening from tonight, or perhaps which era of travel you'd most like to visit in your dreams. And now, close your eyes. The lights are dim. Outside, a soft whistle cuts through the evening mist, and the station clock ticks somewhere high above the heads of the passengers gathered under the iron and glass canopy. This is the age of steam, a quiet revolution that has changed how people understand distance, time, and even the rhythm of their lives. It begins with a sigh, the hiss of steam releasing from the engine's valves. Then comes the sharp, echoing whistle. One long note that ripples through the fog, signaling that departure is near. The passengers rise, pulling scarves tighter, closing newspapers, brushing invisible dust from coats. Outside, a conductor walks the length of the train, his lantern swinging like a slow heartbeat. He calls out destinations with the measured rhythm of a ritual. First stop, Reading. Then Oxford, Banbury, Birmingham. Each name is a promise, each syllable another thread in the tapestry of the industrial landscape that Britain is becoming. A few late arrivals hurry down the platform, their breath clouding the air, the wheels of their luggage rattling against the cobblestones. A boy in a flat cap presses his face to the window to watch the engine's front, gleaming brass and black iron, alive with motion. And then, at last, the moment comes. The guard raises his flag. The whistle cries again. The train shudders as if waking from a dream and begins to move. First a lurch, then a slow crawl, and finally that rhythmic, hypnotic sequence of sounds. Clack, 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 clack. Outside the window, the great city unfolds like a series of fading frames. Smoke drifts above rooftops, chimney pots stretch into the dawn, and warehouses slide past one by one. The Thames glimmers briefly, reflecting the first silver light of morning, then disappears behind rows of brick houses built so close together that they seem to share a single heartbeat. Laundry flaps between windows. Milk carts trundle along cobbled lanes. The city, always awake, seems to pause for a breath as the train rolls northward. Past gaslight still burning, past lamplighters making their final rounds, past the silhouettes of factories whose chimneys already belch smoke into the pale sky. Inside the carriage, life is just beginning. The passengers settle into their seats, and the rhythm of the wheels beneath them creates a lullaby of motion. There's the creak of the wooden frame, the faint rattle of the window latch, the occasional soft murmur of conversation. Across the aisle, a woman unwraps a paper parcel. Sandwiches, perhaps, or a slice of sponge cake baked that morning. Next to her, a gentleman folds his umbrella with a sigh, then leans back and closes his eyes. The hum of the train fills the silence like a gentle tide. The air smells of coal smoke and oil, a scent that clings to fabric and hair but somehow feels comforting. Through the slightly open window, the wind carries flecks of soot that glitter briefly before vanishing into the mist. Each turn of the wheel brings a subtle vibration through the seat, a reminder that this machine, made of metal and muscle, is alive. Victorian travel was not always elegant, but it was full of wonder. For the first time in history, people could cross the country in a single day. Farmers, clerks, and poets alike could watch the world stream by faster than any horse could run. And yet, for all its speed, the early train still felt unhurried, steady, deliberate, as though respecting the rhythm of the human heartbeat. Outside, the fields begin to replace the city. A line of trees appears, then a hedgerow, then the distant outline of cottages. Smoke curls from chimneys, sheep graze near the tracks, and the frost of early morning still clings to the grass. It is easy to lose oneself here, in the steady beat of the engine, the way the scenery drifts past, like a dream half remembered. Even the light seems different now. Softer, gentler, filtered through the veil of steam that trails behind the train like a ghost of progress. The city has long disappeared behind a curtain of smoke and distance. The world outside is opening like a quiet page, each field and hedgerow inked with the faint blue of morning. From your window seat, the glass feels cool against your hand. The condensation on its surface trembles each time the carriage shivers over the rails, blurring the view of a landscape that seems to still be dreaming. Somewhere behind the hills, the sun is stirring. Its first light doesn't so much arrive as it seeps, slowly, into the folds of the countryside. The mist hangs low over the fields, soft as breath, curling between the hedgerows like steam from a teacup. Every shape, tree, fence, distant barn, appears ghostly, suspended in pale silver air. The train moves steadily north, past stretches of farmland that roll toward the horizon. Sheep graze, heads lowered to dew-covered grass. A plow rests idle beside a hedgerow, its iron gleaming faintly in the light. You might imagine the farmer still inside his cottage, stirring coals in the hearth, the first curls of smoke rising from the chimney. The scent of damp earth mingles with the metallic breath of the train. Every now and then, the wind shifts, bringing in the faint sweetness of hay or the sharp tang of burning coal from distant cottages. The Victorian countryside was a living quilt, stitched with villages, orchards, pastures, and mills. From your seat it feels endless, but also intimate. Every window a painting that lasts only a few seconds before changing again. In another carriage, a small boy points out of the window and whispers, "Cows!" His mother smiles without looking up from her book. The word lingers in the air for a moment, small and human, before it is swallowed by the rhythm of the train. The world slides past in layers. Stone walls, then open fields, then a dark stretch of woodland where the branches knit above the rails like a tunnel. You catch glimpses of tiny stations, each one with its name painted neatly in black letters on a white board. Maidenhead, Twyford, Cholsey. At each, a porter in uniform stands waiting, hands clasped behind his back, cap polished, lantern gleaming. Sometimes no one gets on or off. Still, he stands there as if the ritual itself mattered more than the passengers. A salute to order. a rhythm of service. Between the stations, the countryside breathes again, slowly, endlessly. There are glimpses of riverbanks lined with willow trees, fishermen with rods motionless in the mist, and horses grazing beneath skeletal oaks. The engine releases a soft sigh of steam, and you might imagine that the land is answering back in its own slow exhalation. Inside, the air is comfortably warm, touched with the faint scent of leather, smoke, and old varnish. A silver tea urn rattles gently on its stand near the far end of the car, tended by a steward in a navy waistcoat. Now and then, he pours a cup for a passenger, a delicate porcelain cup on a trembling saucer, and the aroma of strong tea mingles with coal smoke and wool. The seats are upholstered in dark green velvet, the edges trimmed with thin golden thread. Each window is framed with carved wood, its surface worn smooth by years of gloved hands and gentle knocks. A luggage rack of brass and leather runs above, holding hats, valises, and parcels wrapped neatly in brown paper and twine. There's a faint murmur of conversation. A woman describing her niece's wedding in Bath. A gentleman mentioning a business venture in Manchester. But most voices are subdued, as if the rhythm of the train encourages reflection more than chatter. Every sound seems softened, the rustle of newspapers, the click of a watch lid, the delicate chime of teaspoons against porcelain. You might feel your own breath begin to match the rhythm of the wheels. Clack, 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 clack. The noise that once symbolized speed now feels almost meditative, like the slow pulse of a sleeping creature. Through the window, you see the world awaken properly. A thatched cottage with smoke curling from the chimney. Children in wool coats walking along a muddy lane toward a small red brick schoolhouse. A baker setting trays of loaves in his window, the glass already fogged from the warmth inside. Each scene lasts only a heartbeat, yet together they weave a story of ordinary life in motion. The Victorian age may have been an era of great inventions, but most lives unfolded quietly, tethered to the soil, to habit, to the familiar pattern of days. And the train, for many, was the first glimpse of a world beyond that horizon. Some passengers gaze out with curiosity, others with nostalgia. A young couple sits near the door, hands just barely touching on the seat between them. Their reflection in the glass merges with the passing scenery. Two faces superimposed on a landscape of smoke and frost. Ahead, the rhythm of the train deepens as it approaches an iron bridge. The sound changes. Metal humming against metal, the hollow echo of wheels crossing riveted steel. Below, a river curls lazily through the valley, its surface pale and smooth like mercury. A fisherman looks up as the train passes, his hat tipping slightly in greeting. Bridges were among the proudest symbols of Victorian engineering. Each one was both a monument and a promise, an announcement that the age of limitations had ended. But to the passengers inside, it feels like flight. The train glides above the water, momentarily detached from earth, and then descends again with a gentle sigh into another stretch of field. For a brief second, the whole carriage is illuminated by sunlight breaking through the clouds. Dust motes swirl in the golden beam, and you can see every particle suspended in air. The small, invisible poetry of travel. At times, the train seems to slow for no reason at all. Perhaps to let another pass on the opposite line, perhaps for some unseen signal down the track. In those pauses, the silence becomes palpable. A cough, the creak of wood, the flutter of a page. Outside, the countryside stands perfectly still. A scarecrow leans in a field, arms outstretched. A flock of birds wheels above the hedges, catching the sunlight on their wings before vanishing into the clouds. Then, with a soft jolt, the motion begins again, and everything resumes its gentle rhythm, as if nothing had interrupted it at all. You might find yourself breathing in time with it. The way the sound of steam builds, peaks, then fades. The way the fields slide past, giving way to woods, then meadows, then the narrow outline of another village. Each repetition soothing, predictable, like waves upon the shore. The train begins to slow. Its rhythm, steady and hypnotic only moments ago, changes to a measured, deliberate sigh. Outside the window, the countryside folds back, replaced by rows of brick houses and the thin columns of factory chimneys that pierce the pale sky. A bell rings somewhere in the distance. You have arrived, though only for a moment, in the heart of a Victorian provincial town. The hiss of steam thickens, swirling across the platform like breath in cold air. A faint vibration hums through the floorboards as the brakes press against the iron wheels. The train eases to a halt, and for a heartbeat, there is silence. Then, the world awakens. The provincial station of the 1870s was both temple and theater, a place of ceremony disguised as routine. Its roof arches high overhead, ribs of iron and glass catching the soft light of late morning. Everything seems built to echo. The clang of luggage carts, the call of porters, the distant cry of a hawker offering newspapers and penny sweets. A column of steam drifts along the platform, curling around boots and benches, dissolving into the rafters. Somewhere, a clock strikes 9. The hands of time, painted black against white enamel, mark the progress of thousands of small lives intersecting here, each on its own schedule, each believing its journey unique. The doors of your carriage open with a firm metallic click. A few passengers disembark. An elderly woman with a lace-trimmed bonnet, a man in a bowler hat carrying a cane, 2 children clutching parcels tied with twine. Their footsteps ring out on the platform tiles, mixing with the murmur of voices and the deep exhalation of the engine. Near the station entrance, the vendors are already at work. A man in a heavy apron tends a cart of pastries. The smell of warm bread and currants cuts sweetly through the sharper tang of coal smoke. Beside him, a newspaper boy calls out the latest headlines in a voice too big for his frame. Explosion in the docks. Queen to visit Birmingham. New telegraph line complete. On a nearby bench, a flower seller arranges small bouquets of violets and ferns. She wears fingerless gloves, and her basket is lined with damp moss to keep the stems fresh. The sight of her seems to soften the noise around her, like a still life hidden within a crowd. You might imagine the passengers passing by, some buying a paper, others pretending not to hear. They have trains to catch, telegrams to send, hands to shake. But the flower seller remains, patient as stone, as if she has always been here, waiting between departures. Not everyone leaves the train. Inside your carriage, a few passengers remain seated. The air is cooler now that the door stands open, letting in the scent of rain and iron. You can hear the scrape of boots on the platform, the clang of milk churns being loaded into the freight car. A gentleman across the aisle takes out a pocket diary and writes a few careful lines. The ink glistens before drying. Tiny notes about timetables, weather, meetings. You wonder if he'll ever read them again, or if they'll vanish like so many other small moments preserved in haste. The young couple from earlier are still here too, sharing a quiet breakfast. The woman unwraps another paper parcel, a hard-boiled egg, some bread, and a slice of cold ham. The man pours tea from a small tin flask. Steam rises between them, faint and fragrant, blending with the rhythm of their unspoken conversation. Outside, a porter passes by with a broom, sweeping away bits of coal and paper scraps. His movements are slow, methodical, an unending task performed without expectation of notice. The world of the station depends on such people, whose quiet work ensures that the spectacle runs smoothly. A sudden burst of laughter breaks the stillness. Two children run along the far platform, their coats fluttering, their mother calling after them with mock sternness. They stop near the engine, entranced by its gleaming brass and moving parts. The driver leans out of the cab and tips his cap, his face streaked with coal dust and pride. To a child, a steam engine must have seemed like a living thing, half beast, half god. Its breath, its heart, its voice, all made of metal. And yet there was something strangely gentle about the way it rested between journeys, surrounded by pigeons and sunlight, humming softly to itself. You might remember your own first encounter with a train. The awe of that power, the mystery of distance, the promise of adventure. For Victorians, these moments were transformative. The first time ordinary people could look at a machine and feel it carry them into a new kind of future. Through the glass roof of the station, you catch a glimpse of rooftops and narrow streets beyond. The town stretches around the railway, like fabric sewn around a new seam. Once a market village, it has grown into a small industrial hub. Rows of terraced houses, a foundry by the river, and the faint chime of church bells marking the half-hour. The arrival of the railway changed everything. It brought goods, letters, travelers, and ideas. The station itself became the town's heartbeat, its comings and goings dictating the rhythm of daily life. If you stepped outside, you might find the cobblestones slick with rain. You'd smell baking bread, coal smoke, and horse dung. You'd hear the clip of hooves, the cry of a paperboy, the metallic clang of tools from a blacksmith's yard. The 19th century was alive with sound and motion, yet somehow still full of silence. A sharp whistle cuts through the murmur of the station. It echoes against the iron beams like a call through a canyon. The guard waves his flag once, twice, and the engine stirs. Steam pours from the pistons, wrapping the carriages in a brief, swirling fog. Porters step back. Passengers hurry to their compartments. A door slams, then another. The sound builds into a familiar chorus of motion returning. You feel the first gentle pull as the wheels begin to turn. The platform starts to slide away. The faces outside blur. One last wave from the flower cellar, the glint of the porter's lantern, and then the town recedes, replaced once again by the patient rhythm of rails and fields. The gentle countryside begins to fade into something denser, darker, more alive with movement. The green fields are replaced by chimneys, the scattered cottages by rows of red brick terraces. You're entering the industrial heart of the Victorian age, where smoke defines the skyline, and progress has a pulse you can almost hear. Through the glass, the landscape trembles under its own ambition. Black plumes rise into the pale sky, curling and folding upon themselves. Railway sidings split into dozens of thin iron veins, carrying coal, timber, and steel to every corner of the nation. The train hums through this world like a messenger of its own creation, both participant and witness. To your left, the first mills appear, vast buildings with windows like rows of watchful eyes. Their chimneys belch out steady columns of smoke that twist into the cold air. You glimpse the silhouettes of workers moving behind the glass, small shapes tending looms, levers, pulleys. The light flickers across the windows as the train passes, turning each face into a momentary reflection, gone before you can study it. Farther along, the outline of a foundry glows faintly orange from within. Molten metal pours like liquid fire down a trough, throwing sparks that flare against the gray morning. Even from the carriage, you can almost feel the heat of it. A living furnace at the heart of industry. Beside the foundry, a canal runs parallel to the tracks. Barges loaded with coal drift slowly under an arched bridge, their movement a stark contrast to the rushing train. It's as though two centuries, the old and the new, run side by side, each refusing to surrender entirely to the other. The sound changes as the train enters the industrial belt. No longer just the rhythmic clatter of wheels, now joined by distant hammers, whistles, and the faint chime of machinery. Each town seems to have its own music, a pattern of echoes shaped by work, invention, and the endless repetition of labor. Victorian travelers often described this part of England as both awe-inspiring and terrible. It was the age of marvels, but also of smoke, soot, and fatigue. Factories produced everything from iron rails to fine lace, yet the air tasted of coal and the river water ran dark as ink. From your seat, though, the scene carries a strange beauty. The steam of the train mingles with that of the town until both are indistinguishable, white and gray threads weaving together into a single drifting cloud. The rhythmic hammering from a distant workshop echoes the train's heartbeat, as though the whole landscape breathes in unison with it. Inside, the warmth of the compartment softens the contrast. The glass is slightly fogged, blurring the harsher edges of the outside world. Passengers continue their quiet rituals. A handkerchief dabs a brow, a pen scratches across paper. The faint click of knitting needles keeps time with the rails. A traveling salesman unfolds a wooden sample box on his lap. Inside, small brass fittings gleam like treasure. Across from him, a schoolteacher in a gray coat marks essays with neat, looping pen strokes, her brow furrowed in silent thought. The young couple from earlier still sit by the window, sharing an apple between them, their reflection flickering against the red glow of furnaces in the distance. Every movement, every sound feels deliberate, part of a quiet choreography. Even as the train speeds through the very heart of industry, the compartment remains an island of calm. Ahead, the train approaches one of the great triumphs of Victorian engineering, a lattice bridge spanning a wide river below. The girders form a web of black iron, glinting faintly where rivets catch the light. As the wheels touch the bridge, the sound shifts, hollow, echoing, metallic, like the heartbeat of the structure itself. Below, barges and tugboats glide along the water, their wakes fanning out behind them in pale silver arcs. On the far bank, the outlines of warehouses rise against the horizon, and cranes extend like skeletal arms toward the sky. The Victorians believed deeply in their bridges. Each was a symbol of mastery over nature, a statement that the world could be measured, mapped, and crossed. And yet, looking down through the latticework of the bridge, you can still see the river moving freely, eternal and indifferent beneath all the iron. The train continues, passing groups of men working along the embankment. Their coats are thick with soot, their movements slow but practiced. Some are repairing the tracks, others loading coal into small carts that rattle beside the rails. They glance up briefly as the train passes, a blur of faces, pale against the smoke, disappearing into the motion. These men are the pulse of the railway, the invisible hands that keep the vast machine alive. Their days unfold to the rhythm of whistles and bells. Their rest comes when the world is quiet again. Even the passengers, cocooned in comfort, owe their safe journey to the steady labor of those who walk among sparks and steam. A sudden gust carries the smell of tar and metal into the carriage. It lingers in the air like a signature, an invisible mark of the world outside. The next town appears almost without warning. One moment, open fields and mills. The next, rows of houses pressed close to the tracks. Laundry hangs from windows, waving faintly in the smoky wind. Children chase one another down the narrow lanes, their laughter quickly lost beneath the roar of the engine. you catch glimpses of life behind the curtain of smoke. A woman filling a pail at a pump, a boy delivering bread, a cat curled atop a coal pile. Ordinary moments framed in the flicker of passing time. Victorian industrial towns were places of paradox. Poverty beside invention, exhaustion beside pride. In the same street where soot stained every window, new patents were written and new machines designed to change the world again. The air itself was heavy with dreams, though they were sometimes hard to breathe. As the train passes through this landscape of ceaseless labor, you begin to feel the rhythm differently. It's no longer just a journey across geography. It's a passage through the heartbeat of a century. The sun is lowering, though it hides behind thin clouds. Its light is stretched long across the ground, illuminating patches of grass and stone with sudden, fleeting brilliance. A pond flashes like a mirror. A flock of crows wheels above a ridge, black wings momentarily turned gold before melting back into shadow. Inside the carriage, the lamps flicker to life. Small glass globes mounted above each seat. Their glow is amber and soft, just enough to turn the wood paneling into a warm honey color. Passengers blink and glance upward as the world outside dims into silhouettes. For a brief, suspended moment, the interior of the carriage feels like its own little universe, separate from the moors and the chill of evening. A bubble of gentle warmth carried forward through the twilight. The air smells faintly of oil, leather, and tea. No one speaks loudly now. The conversations that filled the earlier hours have dwindled into whispers and sighs, as though the rhythm of dusk encourages stillness. A woman quietly threads a needle, mending a tear in her sleeve. A man with a newspaper has stopped reading, his eyes unfocused, following the play of shadows across the glass. The young couple sit closer now, her head resting lightly on his shoulder, his gloved hand turning her wrist gently in his fingers, tracing the pale edge of lace on her cuff. A porter passes through the corridor, his boots creaking against the wooden floor, the faint scent of lamp oil following him. He checks the lamps, adjusts the wicks, nods politely to the passengers. When he opens the door to the next carriage, a draft of cool air rolls through, carrying the scent of heather and iron. For a moment, the entire compartment shivers. The lights tremble, a window rattles, and then everything settles again into its slow, breathing rhythm. Beyond the window, the moors are dissolving into blue-gray shadow. The last traces of daylight rest on the higher ridges, where the grass catches the wind in silver waves. A narrow road runs parallel to the tracks for a while, then veers away toward a distant village whose chimneys glow faintly in the dusk. Smoke curls upward from those chimneys, rising straight into the still air. Somewhere, a dog barks, faint, almost lost in distance. And then the world grows quiet again, except for the eternal clatter of wheels and the low, rhythmic hiss of steam. A lone figure stands near a stone wall, watching the train pass. Perhaps a shepherd, perhaps a boy. The sight lasts no more than a second, the blink of an eye, and then he is gone, swallowed by the hills. But something about the gesture lingers, the simple act of looking, of acknowledging the strange creature that hums and glows through the night. The train is now a river of light moving through the darkening world. From the outside, it must look like a procession of small suns, each window a golden square gliding across the moors. The light flickers over rocks and fences, over heather and sleeping sheep, before vanishing again into shadow. Inside, the passengers are cocooned in that same glow. Some write letters, their pen nibs scratching softly on paper. Others sip tea or cider from tin cups. A few have already begun to doze, their heads tilted against the padded seats, mouths half open, breathing in rhythm with the train. The sound now is almost hypnotic. Clack, 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 clack. Steam sighs softly through the vents. The lamps hum faintly with each sway of the carriage. Time stretches, dissolving, leaving only the slow heartbeat of motion. At last, a small station appears, hardly more than a platform and a signal box, its windows glowing warmly in the encroaching night. A single porter waits, his breath visible in the cold. The train slows but does not stop, its whistle sounding a brief note of greeting. For a few seconds, you glimpse the inside of the station office. A desk cluttered with ledgers, a telegraph machine clicking quietly, a kettle steaming over a small stove. Then it all slips away into darkness again, leaving only the hum of motion and the whisper of wind. You can't help but wonder about the man inside that office. How many trains has he seen pass? How many nights has he stood by that stove, watching lights flicker in and out of existence, marking the passing of time not in days, but in whistles? The world of the railway was full of such solitary lives, each one an invisible part of the great machinery of progress. And though no one would ever know their names, they were the keepers of the rhythm that bound an empire together. The moors lie dark now, save for the faint gleam of water in hollows where streams run unseen. Above, the first stars appear, small, steady lights scattered across the velvet of the sky. They flicker faintly through the veil of smoke trailing behind the engine. Inside, someone yawns quietly. A few passengers pull blankets over their knees. The lamps glow steadily, halos forming where the glass smudges. It feels like the entire train is breathing, the slow exhale of a living creature made of wood, brass, and flame. Outside, the whistle sounds again, long, low, mournful. The sound rolls out across the open land, echoing against the hills before fading into silence. It is both lonely and comforting, like a lullaby sung to the night. The journey continues deeper into twilight, steady and unhurried. The world has grown quiet, and the passengers within have surrendered to the rhythm, each lost in thought or dream or the gentle hum of motion. Darkness folds itself around the train like a heavy velvet curtain. The world outside is no longer visible, only suggested by the faint glimmer of stars that appear now and then through the drifting smoke. The passengers have grown silent. Some sleep with their heads against the glass, their breath fogging faint halos on the windows. Others sit motionless, eyes unfocused, listening to the endless rhythm of the rails. It is the hour when thought drifts inward, when the noise of the day fades, and what remains is simply motion and memory. The young couple from earlier are asleep now. Her gloved hand rests lightly atop his, their fingers still intertwined. The salesman snores softly in his seat, his sample box resting like a small treasure chest against his knees. The school teacher's pen has fallen from her hand. Her notebook lies open on her lap, filled with neat, looping words she will not remember writing. In the corner, a porter dozes upright, his head bowed beneath his cap, his lantern flickering faintly beside him. Every few minutes, the train rocks gently, and the flame inside the lantern trembles. But it never goes out. Outside the window, only the reflection of the carriage remains, a ghostly echo of faces, light and motion moving through darkness. The sound of the wheels is hypnotic now. Clack, 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 clack. Each repetition feels slower, more deliberate, as though the train itself is aware of the night and softens its voice in respect. Occasionally, a gust of cold air seeps through the seams of the door, bringing with it the smell of iron and smoke. It reminds you that outside this small, glowing room, the world is vast, cold and ancient. But the rhythm of the wheels steadies the thought. Their song has no beginning and no end, just the eternal continuity of forward motion. You think of the engineers who once laid these rails through valleys and over rivers, cutting paths through stone and marsh so that this journey could exist. Every mile of this iron road carries their echo, the hammering of spikes, the clang of hammers, the creak of timber sleepers settling into earth. Now, decades later, that work hums quietly beneath your feet, alive and faithful. Though it is dark, the outside world is not entirely gone. Every now and then, the train passes a farmhouse with a single light glowing in an upper window. A lantern sways in a barn. A dog runs along the fence, its shape barely visible in the lamplight before falling away into shadow. The landscape appears in fragments, like flashes from an old dream. A bridge, its arch lit by the glow of the train. A pond, perfectly still, reflecting the stars for just a second before the steam clouds erase them. Then nothing again, only darkness and the soft whisper of the wind against glass. There is a beauty in this fleetingness. Victorian travelers often wrote about the way night transformed the familiar into mystery. The same fields, the same towns, by daylight so ordinary, became, in darkness, places of imagination. The unknown lingered just beyond the edge of the lamplight, inviting thought to wander where eyes could not. One man near the end of the carriage has not yet succumbed to sleep. He sits with a letter open on his lap. Pen poised, though the ink has long dried, he reads it again and again, without writing another word. Perhaps it is meant for someone far away. A wife, a brother, a friend lost to distance or time. In the lamplight, his face looks peaceful, though his eyes are filled with that strange calm that comes from remembering. He folds the letter carefully, slides it into its envelope, and rests it in his coat pocket. Then he leans back, exhales softly, and lets the rhythm of the train carry the rest of his thoughts away. The train has become a kind of confessional, each compartment a small chamber of memory. Here, in the deep hours of travel, people are both alone and together, united in the silence that stretches between stations. Every heart beats to the same rhythm. Every dream moves in step with the wheels. The sound changes again. A hollow echo rises from beneath the carriage floor, as though the earth itself has fallen away. You're crossing a viaduct, a ribbon of iron and stone suspended high above a valley. For a few moments, the world opens beneath you. The river below glints faintly, like molten glass. The arches of the bridge fade into mist. The stars above mirror the lights reflected in the water, so that for an instant, it feels as though the train is flying between two skies, one real, one imagined. A wind sweeps across the carriages, moaning through the gaps, carrying with it the faint scent of rain and faraway fields. Then, with a soft jolt, the train returns to solid ground. The echo fades, replaced once more by the intimate hum of the rails. There is a quiet wisdom in travel by night. It asks nothing of you, only that you listen. The world narrows to sound, light, and the motion beneath your feet. Thoughts that were once tangled begin to drift loose, carried away by the steady rhythm of the journey. Victorian travelers sometimes wrote of this sensation. The dream of rails, they called it. A sense that one might move endlessly through time and never truly arrive, suspended in a state between waking and sleeping. It was both comforting and uncanny. The landscape changed, yet always seemed the same. The train, though built of iron, felt alive. And perhaps that is the quiet miracle of steam, that something forged from fire and metal could imitate the gentle pulse of a living thing, steady, warm and endlessly patient. The carriage darkens suddenly. The lamps flicker, shadows shiver across the ceiling. You have entered a tunnel. The sound multiplies. Echoing walls amplify the rhythm of the wheels until it becomes a deep, rolling thunder. For a few moments, the world feels compressed into pure vibration. Sound, heat, and motion fused into one. Then, just as suddenly, the tunnel ends. A burst of cool night air floods the compartment, and the sky reappears, vast and starlit, framed by the arch of the tunnel mouth behind you. The passengers stir faintly in their sleep, as if the train's heart had skipped a beat and resumed. After the tunnel, the silence feels deeper than before. The moon is rising now, low, pale, and almost full. It casts a silvery light across the distant hills, catching the edges of fences and the roofs of barns. The train's shadow moves beside it, long and graceful, gliding silently over the land. You can feel the subtle sway of the carriage, side to side, like the rocking of a cradle. Each motion soothes rather than disturbs. The night, the train, the passengers, all seem bound by an unspoken agreement to move gently, to breathe slowly, to let the world pass without resistance. That invisible hour when time loosens its hold, when every sound seems distant, every thought softened by the hush that only true night can bring. The train continues its quiet journey through the dark countryside, gliding through fields and forests that lie asleep beneath the stars. There is no rush, only the slow, measured breath of the engine and the tender sigh of the wind against glass. You can almost forget that you are moving at all. The world outside has become an endless shade of blue-black, stitched with silver where moonlight touches it. It feels as though the train is not crossing the land, but floating through it, gently, dreamlike, as if following the pulse of something older than time. Inside, nearly everyone sleeps. A few heads rest awkwardly against the walls, others have slumped forward, hands clasped in laps. The carriage is dim. Only the lamps at either end still glow, their light trembling faintly with each sway of the train. In the half-darkness, the faces of the passengers appear softer, more human, stripped of daytime tension and noise. The young couple still sleeps side by side, her bonnet tilted slightly, his collar undone. The salesman's spectacles have slid down his nose. His sample box remains untouched. The schoolteacher murmurs something, a dream perhaps, and turns her head, a strand of hair falling across her cheek. No one speaks. Even the porter, awake again, moves like a shadow, checking latches, adjusting lamps, brushing away a bit of coal dust from a seat. When he opens the door to the corridor, a small breath of cool air enters and drifts through the compartment, stirring a page of the forgotten newspaper. The sound of the wheels beneath is softer now, as if even the train itself wishes not to disturb the hour. Outside, the world is immense and soundless. The moon hangs low, pale as ash, its light stretching long shadows over the land. From time to time, the outline of a forest passes by, dark spires of trees against a faint silver sky. Then a bridge appears, its iron rails gleaming faintly, crossing a river that glows like liquid glass. On the far bank, a cottage window flickers once, perhaps a candle being snuffed, perhaps a dreamer awake. Then nothing again, just darkness and the gleam of the stars reflected in the smoke trailing behind the train. Occasionally, the whistle sounds, a deep, mournful tone that carries for miles. It echoes against the hills, rolls over the fields, and fades into the same silence from which it came. For those awake, it feels almost sacred, a sound that belongs to both machine and soul. At the very front of the train, in the engine's glow, The driver keeps his lonely watch. His hands, darkened with soot, rest steady on the throttle. Beside him, the fireman shovels coal, each motion rhythmic, practiced, eternal. The furnace breathes light across their faces, orange, gold, and red, dancing like the pulse of a living heart. Outside their small window, the rails shine ahead in twin silver lines, disappearing into the night. The driver squints at the signals through the smoke, green, then red, then green again, and nods once, satisfied. He knows every mile of this route, every curve, every bridge. And yet, each night feels different, shaped by the wind, the sky, and the hour. Behind him, hundreds of souls sleep, carried forward by his vigilance. He does not know their names, their stories, or their destinations. But he carries them, as countless drivers have before him, through fog, rain, and night, faithful as the clock on the station wall. At one point, the train slows. A signal glows ahead, amber, then green, and soon the faint outline of a station appears, half hidden in mist. It is small, nearly deserted. Only one lantern burns beside the platform, casting a narrow circle of light on the stone. Inside the signal box, a man in a waistcoat sits by the telegraph. He yawns, checks his watch, and listens as the clicking device taps out its message. Another train passed, another night hour recorded in the endless ledger of travel. He looks out as your train slides by, its windows aglow like a string of fireflies, and for a moment, his face is illuminated. Then the light fades again, swallowed by the smoke in the dark. For him, the railway is not motion, but waiting. A vigil kept through the small hours, alone, with only the sound of wires and wind. He raises his lamp as the train passes, a gesture more instinct than thought, a salute to the unseen connection that binds every line, every journey, every hour. Inside the carriage, sleep has deepened into dreams. The train becomes part of them, a constant rhythm that seeps into every thought. In one dream, perhaps, a passenger walks through endless corridors lined with lamps that never go out. In another, someone sits again in the same seat, looking out the same window, unable to tell if it is dawn or dusk. Travel by night has always been a strange sort of meditation. The body rests while the world moves on. The soul seems to float, untethered. Somewhere in that half state between sleep and waking, time loses its edges. Hours pass unnoticed, and distance becomes a kind of lullaby. Outside, the whistle sounds again, soft this time, almost a sigh. It might be the sound of the train itself dreaming, as though even engines long for peace. Beyond the window, faint shapes return, the dark lines of hedges, the silver sheen of frost on grass, the glint of a pond catching moonlight. The train curves slightly, and for a moment, you can see the rest of its body snaking ahead, a long serpent of fire and smoke gliding through the dark. Its wheels spark briefly where iron meets iron, tiny constellations born and gone in a heartbeat. You feel a strange gratitude then, for the hum of the machine, the warmth of the lamp, the steady pulse that holds the night at bay. The Victorians often spoke of their trains with reverence, calling them iron angels or beasts of light. They were the promise of movement in an age obsessed with progress. But in the silence of midnight, they become something else entirely, a symbol of endurance, of quiet companionship between man, machine, and earth. Inside, the lamps still burn, though they've dimmed. A single beam of dawn filters through a gap in the curtain, casting a pale line across the floorboards. It moves gently with each sway of the train, touching a boot here, a book there, a sleeping hand. The passengers are beginning to stir. A cough, a sigh. the slow shifting of coats and blankets. Someone yawns, then quickly covers their mouth, embarrassed by the sudden sound in the hush. The porter moves through the corridor again, careful not to wake those still lost in dreams. He opens a small brass door and checks the coal heater, then lifts a kettle, still warm, from its stand. The smell of tea, sharp and faintly sweet, begins to spread through the compartment. The young couple blink awake together, confused for a moment by the light. She adjusts her bonnet, he straightens his waistcoat. Neither speaks, they simply smile softly, as though the quiet night has given them a secret. Outside, the first full rays of morning spill over the land. The moors are gone. Now there are fields again, broad and low, glistening with dew. Thin threads of mist cling to the hedgerows, wrapping the trees in soft veils of silver. A river gleams like polished pewter beside the tracks, winding lazily through the valley. The train passes a small farmhouse, its chimney already breathing smoke into the cold morning. A man stands by the gate, pipe in hand, watching the carriages pass. He raises a hand in greeting, though no one on the train will ever see him clearly. It is simply what people do, to acknowledge motion, to salute the world as it passes by. Farther ahead, a windmill turns slowly in the weak dawn breeze, its wooden sails creaking faintly. A flock of birds rises suddenly from a field, startled by the whistle's cry, their wings flashing white against the pale sky. The world feels new again, yet somehow ancient, as though each morning reenacts the first day of creation, quietly, faithfully, without audience. The carriage warms as the kettle hisses. The porter returns, balancing a tray of tea and small biscuits, his movements slow and practiced. He pours carefully, the liquid glinting amber in the lamplight. Each cup clinks softly as it's placed on the small tables between the seats. A few passengers thank him with a nod or a quiet word. The air fills with the faint aroma of strong black tea and sugar. Someone unwraps a parcel of bread and jam. A gentleman consults his pocket watch, tapping its glass, though there's no real hurry to the day. Conversation begins again, but softly, murmured and unhurried. The teacher, now fully awake, reviews her notes under the morning light. The salesman opens his box and polishes a brass fitting with a handkerchief, humming under his breath. The young woman gazes out the window, her reflection mingling with the brightening world outside. The silence between these small sounds feels alive, filled with meaning. It is the language of early morning, half speech, half reverence. The train slows slightly as it approaches another great bridge. Below, a wide river flows beneath arches of iron, its surface shining like glass. The mist lingers above it, caught in golden light, so that the bridge seems to hang between water and sky. The reflection of the train glides across the river's surface, each carriage a streak of soft yellow light mirrored in the moving current. For a few moments, the world doubles. One train above, one below, both carried forward together. Children in a small boat pause their rowing to watch the great engine pass. Their laughter carries faintly upward, a sound pure and fleeting, swallowed almost immediately by the wind. When the train reaches the far bank, the whistle sounds. Long, steady, resonant. It feels like a greeting to the morning itself. Beyond the river lies another town, quiet, orderly, half hidden in the fog. Rows of red roofs emerge one by one as the mist lifts. The chimneys send up their first gray smoke, shop shutters rattle open, milk carts rattle down cobbled lanes. The train glides into the station, slowing with a familiar sigh. Here, the world has already begun to stir. Porters wait with carts and trolleys, stamping their feet against the cold. A woman sells rolls and apples from a wicker basket. Her breath clouds the air as she calls out her wares. The doors open. A few passengers step down, stretching their legs, adjusting coats, greeting those waiting on the platform. Steam spills from beneath the engine, curling around their feet like morning fog reborn. The sound of a bell echoes through the iron canopy. Somewhere, a clock strikes 6. And though the station is alive with sound, the atmosphere is still calm, as though the day hesitates before fully beginning. You remain seated, watching. Through the open door, you see sunlight strike the metal rails, turning them to molten gold. The sky above the station roof is soft and washed with color: lavender, peach, pale silver. There's something deeply human in this pause, this moment between motion and stillness, between sleep and waking. It feels like standing on the threshold of both the past and the future at once. Perhaps that is the true gift of travel, not the arrival or departure, but the quiet moment in between, the awareness that you are moving, that time is passing. Yet all around you is peace. The passengers who remain look out their windows as though reading an unwritten story. The tea cools, the whistle sounds again, and the wheels begin to turn. The station recedes behind a veil of smoke. The morning light follows. The train approaches its first great station of the morning. A town built on trade and smoke, the kind of place that wakes early and never quite sleeps again. From the window, you see rows of terraced houses close to the tracks, their windows glowing with the light of breakfast fires. Laundry hangs limp on ropes between the backyards, already catching flecks of soot. A woman shakes a rug from a windowsill, her apron fluttering in the wind. The station itself rises like a cathedral of glass and iron. Light filters through the roof in long beams that catch the swirling steam. Porters hurry along the platforms, luggage trolleys rattle, pigeons scatter upward in small explosions of wings. The whistle sounds, a long, low note that echoes through the rafters. As the train slows, the vibration in the floor softens into a hum. A few passengers stand, gathering their belongings. A gentleman adjusts his hat. A woman in a blue shawl gathers her children. An old man leans on his cane, waiting for the carriage door to open. When it does, the cool air rushes in, carrying scents of bread, coal smoke, and the faint tang of river water. The station is alive, a world in motion, yet entirely ordinary, every gesture practiced and repeated countless times before. Just beyond the station, a small market stirs to life. You glimpse it from your seat as the train pauses. Stalls with awnings striped in red and white, carts piled with fruit, vegetables, and fish packed in glistening ice. Vendors call softly to early customers. A butcher sharpens his knife on a whetstone, the sound clear and metallic. A flower seller arranges yellow blooms into a tin bucket, her hands red from the cold water. The town square is still half in shadow, half in sunlight. Children run past with loaves of bread under their arms, dogs trailing behind. A newspaper boy lifts his voice above the noise. Morning Post, railway open to Bristol, new engine record speed. His words echo faintly even as the train begins to move again. For a moment, you see your reflection layered over this living painting, the bright market, the morning smoke, the blur of faces. And you realize that to travel is to see life as a series of moments, each complete and vanishing in an instant. Soon, the town falls away behind you, replaced again by fields. But these are not the moors of last night. They are cultivated, marked by order and routine. Stone walls line the pastures. Canals glint between rows of trees. Farmers are already at work, figures bent over plows, horses moving slowly, steam rising from their breath in the cool air. A windmill turns lazily on a distant hill. A flock of geese crosses the sky in a ragged V, their wings catching the light. The sound of the train blends with their faint cries. Two kinds of travel, two rhythms meeting in air. Inside the carriage, the porter collects cups and tidies tables, humming softly to himself. Someone hums along without realizing. The teacher, refreshed, now sketches in her notebook the curve of the hills, the line of smoke. The salesman carefully repacks his brass samples, satisfied, as if ready for the next opportunity the line may bring. Everything seems touched with quiet purpose. Even the engine's steady breath feels more contented, like the sigh of a craftsman who has found his rhythm again. The train crosses a smaller bridge now, a graceful arch of stone spanning a river narrow enough to glimpse in full. The water sparkles beneath, shallow and dotted with reeds. You can see ducks gliding in small circles, their wakes scattering the reflected light into trembling ripples. In the distance, a church bell rings, its sound pure and bright in the morning air. It calls the town to worship, or perhaps to work. In the Victorian world, both were sacred in their own way. The bell's echo lingers, mixing with the hum of the rails, until both become a single note fading towards silence. As the train curves, the spire comes into view, tall and elegant, its stone catching the sunlight. Around it cluster rows of houses, all facing east, their windows bright. The smoke from the chimneys rises straight upward, undisturbed by wind, as though even the air pauses to listen. The tracks begin to multiply, branching like rivers approaching the sea. Sidelines curve away toward sheds and freight yards. Engines stand idling beside coal wagons, their smoke drifting upward in heavy columns. The ground is lined with steel and gravel, all glistening faintly with dew and oil. Ahead rises the station itself, a vast cathedral of glass and iron. The roof arches high above the city's rooftops, its ribs of metal catching the morning light. Through the haze, it seems almost alive, a creature breathing in steam and exhaling progress. As the train nears the platform, the sounds sharpen, porters shouting, luggage carts rattling, the calls of paper sellers blending with the hiss of the engine. The rhythm of the wheels changes from the deep hum of speed to the careful click of precision. Finally, with a long exhalation of steam, the train comes to rest. You step down, or perhaps you simply imagine yourself doing so, onto the platform. The air is warm and heavy, thick with the mingled scents of coal, oil, and bread from the nearby bakery stalls. Light pours through the glass roof in pale shafts, slicing through the drifting smoke and illuminating the vast hall like a sacred space. The noise here is alive, but not chaotic. It breathes in waves. Boots on stone, the roll of wheels, the whistle of another train departing from a far platform. The architecture demands reverence. Iron arches curve above, joined by thousands of rivets, each one a small prayer to endurance. The floor gleams faintly with water from the morning rain, reflecting the feet of travelers hurrying in every direction. Some wear fine coats and polished shoes. Others move with the weary purpose of long labor. Yet all seem bound by the same invisible rhythm, the pulse of industry and time. Porters weave between passengers, calling out destinations, their caps low, their arms strong beneath heavy luggage. A boy sells newspapers from a stack higher than his head. Explosion at the docks, Queen expected in Manchester. Telegraph line restored, he cries, his voice lost in the echo. Another man hawks coffee from a tin urn, steam rising into the air like incense. At a corner table, a woman sells violets tied in small paper cones, her fingers purple with cold. She hums a tune older than the station itself, a fragment of folk melody swallowed by the cavernous acoustics. Beside her, an old man plays a concertina for coins, his notes bright and wavering beneath the iron canopy. Everywhere you look, there is movement, but not hurry. The city has long since learned to pace itself, to fold speed into ritual. This station, this cathedral of motion, is not chaos, but choreography. Through the great doors at the station's end, the city spreads outward in every direction. A labyrinth of narrow streets and wide boulevards, of gas lamps and horse-drawn carriages, of wealth and soot intertwined. The buildings near the station are tall and new, their brickwork still red beneath the dust. Beyond them, older stone facades lean over cobbled alleys, their windows glinting with the reflection of the rising sun. Carriages rattle over the bridge above the station approach. Horses snort, steam rising from their nostrils. In the distance, a church bell tolls the hour, its sound mingling with the clang of factory whistles announcing the start of another day's labor. The city breathes, and the breath smells of coal, ink, and ambition. Every sound seems layered upon another. The iron clatter of rails, the cries of hawkers, the shouts of drivers. And yet beneath it all, you can still hear the slow rhythm of the train, the memory of motion that brought you here. The passengers disperse into the great hall. Each carries a story, though few will ever meet again. The young couple walks hand in hand toward the carriages waiting beyond the gates. The school teacher gathers her papers neatly, stepping aside to let others pass. The salesman lingers to polish his boots on the edge of the platform, then disappears into the crowd. A mother lifts her child to see the trains. The boy's eyes widen at the sight of the great engine, its brass fittings gleaming in the light. To him, it is magic, the living heart of a new age. His mother smiles faintly, perhaps remembering her own first journey long ago. All around, there is movement, but also purpose. No one seems lost, though no one stays for long. The station is both beginning and end, and everyone who passes through becomes part of its eternal motion. The heart of progress. You pause and look back at the engine. Its sides glisten with condensation. Its pistons gleam in the light. The number plate catches the sun and flashes like gold. A few workers stand near it, checking valves, tightening bolts, speaking in quiet tones. The train, though resting, still breathes. Steam curling gently upward from its chimney, valves ticking softly. It seems alive in a way few machines ever do. Perhaps that's why people love them so deeply, not for their speed or strength, but because they mirror us. They work, they rest, they sigh, they dream in smoke. This was the miracle of the Victorian age, to forge something of iron and fire that could carry souls across distance, yet still feel tender, almost human in its endurance. A creation that sang in rhythm with the heartbeat of its passengers. The streets nearest the station are wide and new. Victorian pride made visible in brick and stone. Tall gas lamps line the pavements, their glass still clouded with the soot of the night before. Shopkeepers lift shutters with metallic clanks, revealing displays of books, hats, and gleaming tea sets. The painted letters on the signs catch the morning light. Tailor, bookseller, haberdasher, telegraph office. A horse-drawn omnibus rumbles past, its wheels crunching over gravel. The driver flicks his reins gently, calling to his team in low tones. A boy runs beside it, carrying a newspaper bundle. His boots splash through a puddle, scattering droplets that glitter in the air. From open windows come the faint sounds of morning life. A kettle whistling, a piano being tuned. The laughter of a servant girl talking to the grocer's boy. The city is awakening not in haste, but with the calm precision of something vast and practiced. Everything feels purposeful, inevitable, yet somehow tender. Down a side street, quieter and older, a milkman makes his rounds. His cart creaks, the metal cans clink faintly as they sway. He pauses at each doorway, pouring milk into small ceramic jugs left on the step overnight. From a nearby bakery comes the smell of fresh loaves, the warm scent blending with the cool air and the ever-present trace of coal smoke. Cats prowl near the doors, brushing against the milkman's legs. A lamplighter passes him, extinguishing the last of the street lamps, his pole rising and falling with unhurried rhythm. One world of light ends. Another begins. Farther along, a sweep clears ashes from a hearth, his face marked black by his work. He whistles softly as he fills his sack, his tune mingling with the distant tolling of the church bell, 7 o'clock. Another day begun. The morning crowd gathers like a tide. Clerks in dark coats stride toward the offices, their polished boots tapping on the pavement. Women in bonnets walk arm in arm, their skirts brushing the cobblestones, eyes bright against the cold. A messenger on a bicycle darts between carriages, his telegram bag swinging at his side. In the markets, the vendors are already shouting prices. Fish glisten on crushed ice, apples and pears gleam in wooden crates. A butcher sharpens his cleaver with rhythmic strokes, and a child peeks from behind her mother's skirts, wide-eyed at the sight of it all. It's easy to imagine the whole city as a single body. The station its heart, the streets its veins. Steam and smoke are its breath, and the people, each in their quiet labor, the cells that keep it alive. And yet, amid the energy, there is calm, a kind of order that only comes from routine, from years of repetition. This is not chaos. It is the music of the industrial age, measured and steady. By late morning, the streets slope gently toward the river. The air cools and freshens. Masts rise in the distance, their ropes creaking against the docks. Steam launches glide between barges, leaving thin wakes in the gray-green water. The river smells of salt, tar, and morning. Seagulls circle above, calling in long, echoing cries that bounce between warehouses. You can see the great cranes moving slowly, lifting crates of cargo from the holds of ships. The city is not only living, it is feeding, growing, dreaming. Somewhere far upstream, another train crosses a bridge, its smoke drifting over the water like a veil. Even here, at the city's edge, the rhythm of the railway continues, tying together countryside, town, and port in a single, endless circuit. Everywhere you look, something moves. A carriage turns a corner. A steamboat glides down the river. A clock strikes the hour. And yet, none of it feels hurried. There is grace in the way this new century breathes, in its belief that progress and beauty need not be at odds. The railway had taught people that distance could be conquered, but it also taught them patience, the art of sitting still while the world changed around them. Even now, you can see traces of that quiet acceptance in every passerby. The man reading his newspaper on a bench, the flower seller arranging her petals, the lamplighter resting his ladder against a wall. Perhaps the true spirit of the Victorian age was not speed, but rhythm. A balance between invention and repose, between the furnace and the field. Every puff of steam, every turn of the wheel was an act of faith in the steady pulse of progress. The great train you rode through the night seems distant now, almost dreamlike. And yet, it mirrors life itself. Each carriage a small world, each passenger a fragment of humanity moving toward a destination unseen. Some awake, some asleep, some watching, some dreaming, all sharing the same narrow track of time. You remember how the world looked from the window, fields passing like pages, towns flickering into being, rivers shining like ribbons of light. It all unfolded in silence, and then vanished, leaving only the sound of motion behind. just as life does. The Victorians understood this better than they perhaps realized. They built machines not only to move across space, but to remind themselves of time, its power, its passage, its music. The whistle was not just a signal. It was a song of impermanence. Every arrival contained a farewell. Every departure carried the echo of home. The Victorians built with smoke and steel, but what they truly created was memory. Each puff of the engine's breath was a moment exhaled into the world, visible, then gone. Each journey left a trail, invisible but indelible, on the hearts of those who traveled. Smoke is fleeting, yet it lingers in the air. Steel endures, but it softens with age. Together, they form a balance between permanence and disappearance, a mirror of human existence. Perhaps that is why trains, even now, carry such melancholy beauty. They remind us that everything moves: people, seasons, nations, ideas. And yet, through all of it, the hum of the rails remains, steady, forgiving, eternal. Sunlight glints from windows and the spires of churches. A clock tower tolls the noon hour, each chime rolling across the rooftops like the echo of your journey. And in that moment, something quiet settles in your heart. You realize that stillness was never the absence of movement. It was the harmony between all things that move. The train through the night, the smoke rising from chimneys, the people crossing streets, even the whisper of wind through telegraph wires. All of it part of one great rhythm. You close your eyes. You can still feel the sway of the carriage, the gentle vibration beneath your feet, the sound of the whistle fading into mist. The journey never really ended. It simply became the world around you.